Namaskar, good evening, friends. Behalf of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, I again welcome you all for today's webinar. I am taking opportunity to congratulate all of you for tomorrow's World Animal Day. Dear friends, today again at this fine evening, we have distinguished speaker with us. He is nothing but Dr. N.V. Kurkure sir, Honorable Director of Research, Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University, Nagpur. I welcome sir for today's webinar. I to request Dr. Ram Prabhu sir to brief about today's webinar. Ram Prabhu sir, please.
Good evening to all. So at the outset, I welcome today's speaker, respected Dr. Nitin Kurkure, Director of Research, MAPSU, Maharashtra, for accepting our invitation to deliver a lecture on therapeutic management of economically important diseases of broilers. So he is an expert in poultry diseases and management, and he will elaborate about the various economically important diseases which are affecting broiler industry, and it is of practical importance for the field veterinarians as well as the academicians. So the topic of today's webinar is of very important. So I request all the participants to hear the important message from our respected speaker. So on behalf of ISVM, I welcome you, sir, for today's webinar. So I welcome all the participants and also the senior members of ISVM for today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram Prabhu sir. Before starting our webinar, I would like to introduce about today's speaker. Dr. N.V. Kurkure sir is currently holding as a position of Honorable Director of Research, Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University, Nagpur. Sir is renowned veterinary pathologist and popular teacher and academician. Sir completed his masters from PDKV Akola in year 1991 and PhD from Nagpur Veterinary College, MAPSU in year 2003. Sir is recipient of 8 honors and awards. In that, 2 Young Scientist Award. Sir is recipient of the Fellow of Indian Association of Veterinary Pathology, and Sir is also a best teacher of university. Sir has published one book, six book chapters, 134 publication in national and international journal, and 74 gene sequences. Sir has handled 4 research projects as a principal investigator funded by ICAR and DBT, whose financial outlay is almost more than 5 crore. Sir is also handled 9 research projects as a co-PI funded by ICAR, ICMR and DBT. Sir also completed 23 research projects and clinical trials funded by the private agency and industries. Such a distinguished person is with us and he is delivering webinar on poultry medicine. I request Dr. Kurkure sir to start his webinar. Kurkure sir, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Galdar, for a nice introduction. And at the outset, I would like to thank Indian Society of Veterinary Medicine for inviting me to have a webinar on economically important diseases, therapeutic management of economically important diseases of broilers. Thanks, Dr. Galdar, also for a nice introduction. Am I audible? Shall I start?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Yes, sir.
Okay. So poultry industry is over the period of 30 years, we have seen now 40 years, it is quite a dynamic industry. It is going with very high speed. If you see the animal sector or animal husbandry sector, this is the sector which is growing very fast as compared to the other sectors. It doesn't mean that others are not growing, but they are also growing. But this is taking a higher pace and moving very fast. Excuse me, why am... Okay, so this is going so fast that as today I am limiting myself to the broilers. I'm talking about the broilers only. So there is a 42 days rearing and the chick is converted to chicken. And to surprisingly, I am very surprised to tell you that in these 42 days, this chick grows 60 times. So imagine every day more than double. It is growing so fast. It is growing, and now over the in 42 days, it is weighing almost 2.5 kg, or standard is 2.6 kg, but standard is not achieved many of the times. So almost 2.5 kg is achieved with the chick of 45 grams or 46 grams. So it is almost 60 times this chick grows and it is converted into chicken. So it's like a dream, or it's a miracle bird that has been developed by the geneticist. We should thank to the geneticist for developing this bird in such a nice way, and also to the nutritionist. Also to the nutritionist, the credit should be given, so that they to this bird, so that the optimum output can come out from these birds. So this is really a wonder bird. And so today I'm restricting my talk to the broilers, and in the broilers, economically important diseases are Ranikhet, Gumboro, infectious bronchitis, low pathogenic avian influenza, few subclinical diseases are there. So outline will be, I will deal with these diseases about the diagnosis. Then we will see about the complex of diagnosis of the complex of the disease. And at the end, we will see how we can treat the infected flock and how we can prevent this infection in the next flock. Because poultry husbandry or poultry practices is such a way that in a year, like 6 batches of the broilers, they are placed on any farm or any shade, and the farmers, they take income out of that. So if disease is at the first batch, maybe we have to do some interventions in between so that the disease will not be transferred to the second batch. So this is how I have prepared the my presentation, and let's go through it. And if you have any queries, we will take it at the end probably. So coming to what are the effect of the diseases on production. I told you that broiler, which is of 45 grams, 46 gram, and within 42nd day, it grow up to 2.5 kg. This is a good production, but this doesn't happen as I'm telling you. There are a lot of many hurdles. Our Dr. Prajapati, who is a renowned poultry pathologist, he always mentioned that broiler production is a one-day match. So every over there are some new challenges are there. So for this bird, every week, every third day, fourth day, there is a different challenge. And these challenges, because of these challenges, there can be some disease. And when there is a disease, what happens? It is increase in the mortality. Not necessary that always there will be mortality, but because of some of the diseases, there can be poor growth or stunted growth that you can see. Some of the diseases will not affect these parameters, but they will cause just immunosuppression. They will cause immunosuppression, and maybe later, after 7 days or 8 days, this bird will succumb to another infection, and then they may die, and the diagnosis will be made of the latter disease. But primary cause remains the immunosuppressive disease. Then few of the diseases are in such a way that there is a persistence of residual infection. From one batch to second batch to third batch to fourth batch, the infection is remaining on the farm, and it goes batch to batch, and then leads to the losses. And all these losses, they eat the profit. All these diseases and the losses which happens, they eat the all profit of poultry farming or like that. So there are tremendous losses. So one should take care of the diseases so that the profit can be maintained of the farmers. Now coming to poultry husbandry, most important thing, unlike cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo medicine, you have very clear-cut and differentiable clinical symptoms in them. Maybe diseases A, B, C, D, maybe X, Y, Z, but at least there are certain clinical signs are there or symptoms are there that you can differentiate between the disease. But that is very, very rare in the poultry husbandry, except few like coccidiosis that you will have diarrhea with blood in it and you can easily diagnose. But if you see the other diseases, on clinical sign, it is very hard to differentiate the disease, or it is very hard to make the differential diagnosis of the diseases. So most of the diseases in poultry production, they are diagnosed with the postmortem. So for postmortem, these three things are very, very important for a veterinarian to have. If you want to conduct a good postmortem and come to a good conclusion, he should have a very good sight. He should have a very good sight to differentiate, and by this he can differentiate the lesions. Then not only sight, the feeling of the hand, that is also very, very important. So palpating this, many of the differentials can be done. And third thing, but not least, is the smell. I tell you, with the practice, you can develop this kind of differential that when bird is on the table, with the smell of the bird, you can tell that this can be this. And then after opening, you can confirm it, like necrotic enteritis or gangrene dermatitis, coccidiosis. Yes, there are expert pathologists, those have good experience, they can differentiate with the smell also. But it needs practice and expertise. So for diagnosis of the poultry disease, these three senses must be fully developed and fully used. So now coming to the first economically important disease is Rannicate disease. I think there are few international participants also, so they may not understand this Rannicate disease. So for them, it is a Newcastle disease. In India, we call it as a Rannicate disease. It is a disease caused by avian paramyxovirus. There are two groups in it, avian paramyxovirus 1 and 2, and from 1, this disease is caused. This is highly fatal disease of poultry, particularly backyard poultry, but as now we are limiting ourselves to the broilers. Broilers usually get vaccine, they receive vaccine. So you may not say that kind of mortality which is seen in the free range type of birds, which are not vaccinated. So this is a Newcastle disease virus, and it belongs to Aluviridae and paramyxovirus. This disease is mostly spread with the infected chicken. The infected chicken, they spread this disease, or they become the primary source of this virus. This infected bird, they shed virus during incubation phase, that is the worst. That before they show the clinical symptom, they will shed this virus. Of course, during the clinical stage also, they will shed the virus. Then virus also goes in the egg which are laid, and this also remains present in the carcasses during the acute viral infection. So the infected bird, it sheds this virus in the premises, and the other birds, they take this infection from them. The infected birds shed virus also in the exhaled air through respiratory passage, discharge, fecal sample. Then infection occurs through inhalation of the contaminated material, maybe inhalation or ingestion, maybe water, maybe feed, maybe air, something like that. If it is inhaled, the infection goes on from one bird to other bird. Mostly the wild and pet birds, they carry this infection and spread to the farms. And the most important thing is that, very important thing, this virus survives on the mucous membrane of human respiratory tract for lot many days. This point is very, very important for the farm who has multiple sheds, and there is an outbreak in one shed, And if a person is moving from that shed to another shed, in that case, that person can carry this virus to the other shed with his respiratory tract. So this is how the disease is transmitted. Once the disease, the virus is picked up by the bird, very typical clinical signs you can see, that is torticollis, nervous movement, that you can see in the bird. Nowadays, though I'm showing you this picture, very rarely you will find torticollis in them. In pigeons, of course, you can see it, but in broilers, as they receive vaccines, you don't see any free frank torticollis in them, or drooping of the wing, very rarely you will see. But when you open the bird or conduct the postmortem, very free frank and pathognomic lesion that you can see is the hemorrhages at the tip of the gland. Very clear hemorrhages that you can see at the tip of the gland. Also here I am showing you, the picture may vary case to case. Here it is very free frank at the tip. Here very few tips there are hemorrhages, but yes, this can be a Newcastle disease. Then apart from this, you can see the ulcers in the intestine. Very prominent lesion nowadays, vallogenic viscerotrophic Newcastle disease. You will see the ulcers in the intestine. Many a times it is confused with the other enteric diseases, and the diagnosis is this disease should be taken on differential, and then you can diagnose this disease very rightly. Hemorrhages. Then next lesion that you can very easily find is the cecal tonsil hemorrhages. Cecal tonsil hemorrhages, and nowadays what we are finding, maybe sometime you may not see the lesions in the proventriculus, but in the cloaca you will find some hemorrhagic patches. This is basically morbillivirus. So as the lesions are produced in the rectum of animal, large animal, sheep and goat PPR, similar kind of lesions you will find in the Ranichet disease. So if you see proventricular hemorrhages, then intestinal ulcers and cecal tonsil hemorrhages, you can diagnose very well that this is a Ranichet disease. We will see the therapeutics at the end because I have mostly included the viral diseases. So the therapeutic or prophylactic measures I have clubbed together and put at the last 15 slides are dedicated for that. Just have the overview of the what are the viral, economically important viral diseases and how they affect, how they spread, and how the lesions are produced. So next is the infectious bursal disease, which is also called as a Gumboro, very commonly known as a Gumboro disease. This is caused by Birna virus, highly contagious, and persists in the poultry environment for quite a long time. This virus is very hard, very hard, and it survives the routine disinfectant, cleaning, and heat is treatment is given to the shed. These are very important aspects. This virus is more harder than the Newcastle disease. Newcastle disease can cause a havoc, but luckily it's a fragile also. It's a fragile also. So we can take the steps to kill that virus. But this Gumboro virus or Birna virus, it is a bit hard to kill, and it sustains the disinfectant procedures which are implemented. Then it is excreted in the feces for 10 to 14 days, and I told you this virus can survive up to 120 days on the farm. 120 days. Just imagine how hard this virus is. So from one batch to other batch, because one broiler batch is of 42 days, maybe you can take plus minus 2-3 days. Cleaning, disinfection another 7 days, so it becomes 50 days. And maybe when next batch will come, it will be around 51 or 55 days. Still this virus will remain there, and it can give infection to next flock. So that's why this point is very important. Also, this virus, if is contaminated, feed or water is contaminated, it can remain viable for 42 days. What was our observation is that when there is a disease outbreak, the birds, they are culled or sold. The remaining feed, feed is there that has been offered to the next batch. When it is offered to the next batch, this virus remains live in it for 52 days, and then the disease is transmitted to the next batch. This should not happen. That's why this point is very, very important. 52 days is too much. Coming to the clinical signs, I told you in poultry, it is very difficult to differentiate or differential diagnosis on the basis of the clinical signs. But here you can see the white diarrhea, ruffled feathers is seen in the other. The very peculiar thing is the spike mortality. If farmer is maintaining the daily mortality record, like I'm showing you here, maybe 10, 20, 10, 20, 20, 20 is happening in a flock of 5,000. And suddenly it will go to 30, 40, then it will go to 150, and then again drop down. At the seventh day, it will again become normal to 20, 30. It will continue. And as it is an immunosuppressive disease, maybe later on, again another E. coli infection takes place and the mortality may again increase, little bit increase from 10 initial, it will go to 25, 30 at the latter. So this is a particular mortality pattern. If you see it, you can very well diagnose that it's a infectious bursal disease. This is called spike mortality. Postmortem lesions are very frank. You can see the hemorrhages on the breast muscle, hemorrhages on the thigh muscle. Then enlarged bursa. This is quite an old picture which I have in my repository, maybe 15-year-old picture. It's enlarged bursa. Then this is a new picture. Now recently we got it. So this is again a hemorrhagic bursa. So nowadays you can see the bursa. Most of the Gumboro cases or IBD cases, you will see bursa like this. Half of the hemorrhagic and half is pale. Like that bursa you can see nowadays, but still it's a Gumboro disease. This is one very good I wanted to share with you all, those who are seeing this presentation or observing this present. This is normal bursa. Very, very rare to find it. Very, very rare to find it. We maintain these birds in isolators without any vaccine, without any challenge. And I could see the lustrousness of this bursa and the follicles, how good they are. This is a normal bursa. Very rare to find. I thought just I must share with you. With even the vaccination, whatever the vaccine we use, Leucort or intermediate or whatever the strain we use, it damages bursa. You very rare to find a normal bursa. Then subclinical infections are also quite more as far as the Gumboro disease is concerned. And in that condition, you may not get the free frank hemorrhages in the bursa, but you will see some at some places you will see the hemorrhages like I have shown it here. So this is also Gumboro or subclinical infectious bursal disease. This is also that, and this is more dangerous. This is more dangerous because these are overlooked, and then the birds are maintained, and the birds they succumb with other infections later on, and losses are more. So that was about Gumboro. Now I'm trying to put you the adenoviral infections. They are also economically important. Only thing is that they do not come quite often. Every 3 years, 4 years, after some period, they will come and then cause the devastating effect on the broiler production. These are adenoviruses. Actually, these adenoviruses, they enter into the India. Earlier, we were free of this. But when the vaccines were imported from the outside country, so it entered with them. So it was a hidden pathogen which came along with the vaccines to India and then produced the diseases in broilers. So inclusion body hepatitis, there are many adenoviral infections, but I'm limiting, as this is a broiler webinar, so I'm limiting to the inclusion body hepatitis. This is sudden onset is there between 3rd to 6th week. Then same as this spike mortality you can see as that of Gumboro, and the 7th day it will may subside. And total death usually under 10%, but sometime when it is complicated, it may go up to 30%. So many of the times it confuses with the Gumboro disease, that is inclusion body hepatitis. And in this disease also you can find few cases, you can find hemorrhages on the thigh muscle. But very remarkably with postmortem, you can identify that liver will be pale and there will be fluid accumulated around the heart. This is very peculiarity of this inclusion body hepatitis. Many of the cases, this hydropericardium will not be seen, but paleness of the liver or hemorrhagic spots on the liver. I have some more pictures to share with you. Maybe next. You see, these are the 4 different grades. When we do postmortem, we usually grade the lesions. When we grade the lesions, so this is how we grade the lesions. So either you can see very pale or some hemorrhages, and here you can see some petechial large, too many hemorrhagic spots that you can see in the inclusion body hepatitis in the trials. When we do histopathology, we pathologists always enjoy this, and when lesions are seen and when we do histopathology, we can see some inclusion bodies and diagnose. So this is how the hydropericardium you can see in the birds which are died with inclusion body hepatitis. I think with these lesions, you can very well easily diagnose inclusion body hepatitis in the broilers. Then coming to very important disease, that is in infectious bronchitis. Nowadays also, all human beings, we are worried about the coronavirus. And this is also a coronavirus of chicken. Similarly dangerous, it's nowhere less as we are facing in humans, the pandemic in humans. Corona has also given a lot of trouble to the poultry industry. So transmission is again by inhalation or the droplets and ingestion of the contaminated feed and water from the infected birds. One very good thing about this virus, I would like to tell you that it is very fragile. It is very, very fragile, and it can be destroyed with the common physical and chemical agents. That's what we do in our now pandemic, corona pandemic. We use simple soap to wash and sanitizers to put on the hand so that virus can be easily destroyed. So for poultry industry also, that's a good thing that all coronaviruses, they are very fragile. That is a good thing. Virus persists in the respiratory tract or feces of the broilers and also in the eggshells of the infected bird. So this disease, actually infectious bronchitis, it can affect broilers as well as the layers also. And in the layers, it affects at the various stages. And when it affects at the laying stage, particularly in the breeders, the eggshells, they are also been, they also have this infectious bronchitis virus in it, and then it continues. It survives well outside during the winter. So during the winter season, as the climate is cold, that time it survives quite a long time outside the body, and then it spreads very fast. And so in the winter time for the poultry industry is really very cautious time because of the infectious bronchitis infection. This is one thing which I thought I must share with you. We know infection or coronavirus since 1930, almost 90 years back, we know coronaviruses, which are affecting chickens. And if you see, once we know about these viruses, we started implementing strategy to control it, how this virus got changed. So after 1930, it became nephropathic. Then it became uteropathic. Then in 60s, it becomes enteropathic. Then it becomes muscularpathic. And then again, now Cusack strain has come, which is causing the ascites in the broilers. Also in between, there was a nephropathic strain outbreak were also there, and it was causing damage to the kidney. So this virus, as and when we develop the strategy to control it or to have the vaccines for it, we have vaccines for infectious bronchitis since long, almost 30, 40 years we have vaccine. And after that, this virus has changed and it is still remain in the poultry industry and causing damage to the industry. I thought I must share with you this with the recent context. What happens in infectious bronchitis? One important thing that every time it is very difficult to diagnose the infectious bronchitis. many of the times this virus remains subside in the subclinical form, and other bacterial infections like Mycoplasma or Escherichia coli, they take upper hand. So one thing you can notice that if there is uneven growth in the farm, you can suspect it for the infectious bronchitis as a cause for it. Then you can find gout in broilers below third week or fourth week. You can find the gout, and very peculiarity, that is tracheal plugs. You can see the difference in the quality of the picture. That is a difference in the quality of my cell phone. This is how it has been evolved. So like that, the clarity has also increased. So this tracheal plugs, whenever you find the tracheal plugs, at least sometime, somewhere you should think that it can be infectious bronchitis as a subline cause. Urates, gout, you can see very well in the chicks, and that can be because of nephropathic stain. And also may not be that frank, but you can see these ureters full of the urates. That can be a gout or suspicion. Also, you can see the kidney. Kidney is also uremic, and you can suspect that subtle cause is infectious bronchitis. In layer, there are quite good symptoms. On that basis, you can very well identify infectious bronchitis, but I'm limiting myself today for the broilers only. In layers, there are good clinical signs. So now coming to very, very important and number one enemy of Indian poultry industry, that is avian influenza, but it's a low pathogenic avian influenza. So influenza virus of type A, it can cause a disease in the broilers or poultry in a two form. One is highly pathogenic avian influenza, which is caused by genotype H5N1, which is also known as a bird flu. Bird flu, that's a common name, we know about it, but it's a highly pathogenic avian influenza and almost 100% mortality because of that. And that is zoonotic. Another way how the disease is caused is low pathogenic avian influenza, which is caused by H9N2. There is in influenza virus, there is a lot of pre-assortment and things are there. And these, so H9N2, it causes low pathogenic avian influenza, and it is very endemic in India, very widely endemic in India. In common language, if you go to in the language of the farmer, we call it as a VVND. We call it as a VVND. Very sweet name we have given to it. Instead of calling avian influenza, low pathogenic influenza, it's a mild name given is very virulent Newcastle disease. But still, it's a number one enemy and causing a lot of damages to the broiler industry, north to south or east to west, everywhere. So to tell something about this virus, I will be talking mostly about the low pathogenic avian influenza only, because highly pathogenic avian influenza is not that common, or once it was there, it is not in the poultry industry. So this virus, as with the earlier viruses, it is present in all body secretions and excretions of the bird, also in the feces. Like Gumboro, this virus is very, very resistant to the physical, chemical things which are used to disinfect the shed. Even sunlight cannot destroy this with the limited exposure. Of course, for a longer exposure, maybe 2 hours, it can destroy influenza virus. But for 20 minutes exposure to the sunlight will not be able to destroy this. Also, the thing is that if you use chemical disinfectants like formaldehyde, sodium hypochlorite, that sodium hypochlorite we use very widely to control coronaviruses. But these influenza virus is a bit resistant to that, and it can survive for many days at low temperature. Like winter, it can survive for many days at the low temperature. Then The transmission, as I told earlier also, it is excreted in the all secretion excretions. It contaminates the environment. Almost all poultry appliances and equipments, they are contaminated. Also, it go from one bird to another bird by aerosol or the fomites. And wild birds are often known to transmit the disease from one place to other place. So from one farm to other farm, not only wild birds, nowadays what we usually say that the lorries or the trucks which transport birds from one farm to other farms, or those who come for the pickupping of the broilers which are of marketable age, they transmit this disease. But not only that, the wild birds can also help in the transmission of disease from one farm to another farm. Coming to the clinical signs, as with the other diseases, you will find the same clinical signs, but the only remarkable thing is that the swollen and cyanotic wattle and comb. I have some pictures for it that you can see. Excessive salivation is there, nasal discharge that you can see. Sometime in HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza, bird may die showing without symptom. One remarkable symptom which is observed nowadays, that when low pathogenic avian influenza is there, bird they decrease their activity and the sounds are very less from the poultry farm. Usually we see that poultry, they never keep quiet. They always produce some or other sound and they always make some noise. But when the birds are affected with this low pathogenic avian influenza, you will find that they are very quiet. There is no sound. And when nervous system is involved, you will find almost no movement of these birds. And the symptoms like torticollis and what they are seen of the Newcastle, that you can find in this. And if you see the birds which are affected with this, you can see the swelling of the face. These are pictures from Cornell. I had taken it from that website. So swelling on the face, cyanotic comb and wattles. These are less, but if, more you can see beyond this. Then cyanotic shanks. This is very particular. You won't find this in any of the diseases. This is very particularly of the avian influenza that you will see. Then you can again see here the cyanotic face, may not be swelling, but cyanotic face that you can see wattles. Then cyanotic shanks and paws. And if you see the lung, you can see the pneumonic lungs and severely congested lung. At the bottom, you can see here. And these are the pictures from Akambi outbreak in the Nairobi. Pictures are from that. And nowadays, when there is a subclinical kind of thing that you can see the tracheal plugs or the bronchi plugs at the bifurcation of the bronchi. So this is trachea and then it is bifurcating. Here you can see that. So that was about avian influenza, low pathogenic avian influenza. And now I will tell you something about the subclinical disease. I have shown you the pictures and postmortem lesions or the symptoms of the very free-frank disease that you can diagnose. But the amount of the vaccines we put into it, the broilers which receive, number of vaccines, good quality vaccines. If you see the husbandry practices, that is also quite improved. The nutrition has improved. So because of this, you may not see the free-frank diseases, lesions or the disease in the broilers. And many of the times it remains subclinical form, which is not diagnosed, but it do matters. Because of subclinical form also, the production get reduced. So I'm here showing you some graph of some subclinical disease. If the disease happens at the 21 days, this is the normal daily body weight gain daily, which should happen or which should be there by this bird. But if there is a subclinical infection, few days it will be constant and again the bird will try to gain body weight, but there will be always a difference of 15 to 20 grams per day. And you see the difference for 21 days. 15 to 20 grams, so it matters. Though there will not be any mortality, but there will not be any like the mortality will not be there, so it will not be noticed. But you see the body weight gain of the broilers will be 300 to 400 gram less than the expected. So that is why subclinical is more dangerous than the pre-frank disease. So in subclinical diseases, there can be increased mortality by 2%, little bit, which is not noticed. Increase FCR from 1.65, it will go up to 1.8. Sorry for the decimals, it is 1.85. 1.6 from 1.65, it will go to 1.85. So 0.2 rise in FCR will be there. Poor body weight gain, I already told you that there will be difference of 300 gram gain difference will be there. And delay in the body weight gain, that the broiler which is supposed to weigh 2.5 kg will weigh only just 2 kg in 42 days. What happens because of this? Instead of 6 cycles in a year, the farmer can have only 5 cycles. And then he doesn't get a profit for one batch. So that's a loss. It may be loss in profit, whatever you can say, but it's a loss. And there is again more expenditure. Mortality is there, those birds are lost, and there is a cost of medicine, maybe to the next batch or subsequent infection is there. So there is definitely some cost of medicine, and then it adds to the losses. It adds to the losses. Now coming to last but one, that is diagnosis of the disease complex. In poultry nowadays, though I have informed you or just narrated you about the individual diseases, in last 10 years, I have seen the disease never comes single. Disease never comes as a single. Either there is a sublime cause and then pre-frank disease of some other etiological agent like that. So either there can be 2, 3, 4 like that, and more the complication or more the etiological agents are there, losses are also more. So diagnosis is like a complex. It's really a complex kind of thing. So the correct and timely diagnosis is crucial for the treatment and the management of the disease. If the disease is not correctly diagnosed, you may give anything, nothing is going to happen. And if disease is not diagnosed even in the time, and if it is delayed, I told you this, Prajapati sir always say it's a one-day match. It's a one-day match. If you lose 3-4 days, whole profit of the batch is gone. So correct and timely diagnosis is very, very important in diagnosis of the poultry diseases. And confirmative diagnosis requires combinations of different techniques. Just on the postmortem, it is not possible. You need help of the laboratories and other things that is required. Apart from that, local knowledge of the disease problems is also very, very essential. If disease is at the Haryana or Gujarat or in the Namakkal, and I'm going there and conducting postmortem, maybe I may be able to diagnose which is detectable disease, which is seen by my eyes, but I will never know about the sublime causes of the disease, which is only local vet, the person who knows the disease situation in that locality can tell you. So the local knowledge of the disease is very, very important for the diagnosis of the poultry diseases. What is the disease on the other farms? Then what are the diseases in the breeder flock? If it's integration, that is very important. If there are certain diseases in the breeder, that will be percolated to the commercial broilers. Maybe what is the vaccination strategy of the breeder, that will depend the diseases which are happening in the commercial flocks. So that is also very important. And detailed involvement of the clinical examination, post-mortem examination, and laboratory test. Laboratory tests are also very, very important. Nowadays, it is getting much more important. So for the diagnosis, you need to know clinical history, you need to know the field observations. You need to have the diagnosis or the laboratory diagnosis, histopathology, laboratory techniques, PCR and all. And apart from this, what is the epidemiology, demography, management of that farm? All these are contributory factors for the correct diagnosis. So when these will be known, you can correctly diagnose whether it's a complicated IB with Newcastle disease or IB with mycoplasma or IB with E. coli, like that. So that is very, very important to correctly diagnose the disease. Now coming to the last part, and that is therapeutic management of the disease. So coming to therapeutic management, there are routine like you treat with the other species. There are few things which you have in your hand is antimicrobial, some alternative therapies, supportive therapies, some metabolic therapies are there. All hold together good in the poultry therapeutics also. Same principle is there. Bit variations are there between some diseases. Little bit variations are there that we will see. Antimicrobials usually are in none of the viral diseases we prescribe antimicrobials or antibiotics, because we have seen many of the times it complicates the condition. And when kidney is damaged, the antibiotics are not flushed out and it aggravates the mortality or aggravates the disease condition. So unless there is a secondary complications with the bacterial diseases, we never prescribe. Usually in other species, we give the antibiotics to prevent the secondary bacterial infection, but that will be very, very risky in case of chickens if we just prescribe the antimicrobials if there is a viral disease. So unless there is a complication, we do not prescribe. Then one very important disease, that is Ranichet disease or the Newcastle disease. This is such a disease in which you can use a therapeutic vaccination. In spite the disease is there, you can advise a therapeutic vaccination in the phase of disease outbreak. So when disease outbreak is there, you have to diagnose it as a Newcastle disease. You can suggest the vaccine, Ranichet disease vaccine. Because of this vaccine, there is a production of the IgM, and IgM is a pentavalent, and so it helps in the neutralizing the viruses which are in circulation. Also, there is a high release of the gamma interferon, and this helps in the quick recovery of the birds. So it is a usual practice whenever there is a Ranichet disease or Newcastle disease, first we advise is the vaccination of the flock, but this is the only disease. We cannot try it in Gumboro, we cannot try it in other influenza or LPA or infectious bronchitis. No, not possible. Only in Ranichet disease or Newcastle disease, because of that peculiarity of that virus is immediate production of the IgM and gamma interferon. Then supportive therapies is equally or very, very important in the poultry therapeutic management. That is, whenever there is a disease, we have to give the extra vitamins, trace minerals, particularly selenium and zinc. They are required to cope up with the disease, and fight with the disease. These are very much required. Nowadays, earlier we had only these two choices, but now we have some good immunity boosters like herbal immunity boosters are available. Some beta glucans like products are available, which helps in the increasing the immunity of the birds. So those should be always prescribed along with the other medication which is given to treat the flock. Then in therapeutic management, it is also very, very important to give instant energy drink like kind of things to the birds. See, when the birds, they are, this bird is growing very, very fast. 60 times in 42 days. 60 times in a 42 days. So if bird doesn't eat for a 1 day, if he is ailing, and if he doesn't eat for a 1 day, it's a loss. And it becomes more susceptible again for the next infection. So nowadays, in therapeutic management, there are certain medicines which are available which can give the instant energy to the birds, like niacin supplements and all the things are there. I purposefully thought not to include the trade name in this because it's a society seminar. Otherwise, name could have been included, but I purposefully planned to not to include name. So such drinks are available for the birds also, and they are wonderful, gives wonderful result, and recovery is very fast. And in therapeutic management, always see that toxin-free diet should be only offered to the birds. See, what happens when there is a disease, maybe many of the times the mycotoxin is a subtle cause, which is helping the viruses to cause the disease. So in such situation, if we treat the bird with the other therapeutic management, and if we still continue the if we continue to feed the toxins to the bird, whatever the therapy we are giving or the disease or costly medicine we are giving to the birds, it will not be any effective. So the toxin-free diet should be ensured, at least not before disease, but after disease, you must ensure that diet is toxin-free. Then recently, there is a very good research is going on, and many things have come up that feeding of antiviral medicines. There is a very good review published by Yasmin in 2020, and we also wrote one review on this antiviral medicines in the poultry. I think it will be published this month. It's accepted. So there are good number of herbs which are available, which can act as an antiviral, and they have been claimed. And we know Azadirachta indica neem, which is known antiviral since long, but very few has been practiced as far as the poultry industry is concerned. But recently, you can see there are many companies. They are coming with the various antiviral medicines. So during the phase of the outbreak of the viral diseases, you can give with this antiviral medicine and take care of your birds. Then in the therapeutic, it is also very, very important to use the spray of the disinfectant. There are large number of disinfectants available for the poultry industry. Triple salts are there, iodine compounds are there, chlorine compounds are there, quaternary ammonium compounds are there, many are there. Some oils are there, like pine oils are there. You can use any of them, which is a good. You believe on it, you can ask to use it, but it should be used at the proper concentration. If concentration is less, you know these viruses are very sturdy. They are not going to die with this, but they will make the bird to die because of them. So use disinfectant at the proper concentration and proper frequency. In the phase of outbreak, you need to spray twice or thrice a day, depending on the severity of the disease. Spraying of the disinfectant will stop the spread from virus from one bird to other bird. Also, whatever the organ is damaged, you can give the target organ protection drugs. Like if respiratory systems is affected, there are many sprays available, menthol sprays, and many sprays are available that you can give and give the relief. Liver is damaged, you can give liver tonic. Kidney is damaged, there are kidney flushers available. All they can be used so that the recovery will be fast, and the mortality, instead of 3%, we can bring it to the 1.5%, like that. So all these includes in the therapeutic. Then I will take some 4 or 5 slides about the preventive programs. It is very, very important because we always say prevention is better than the cure, and little bits expenditure on the prevention can take care of, means it can save a lot of money on the cure. So this in preventive program, it is a biosecurity and health plan, then prophylactic treatment, vaccine and vaccination. This is the base of all programs that we should do. Coming to the vaccines, actually, I'm not sure whether you are able to see here the eye drop vaccine. I have shown one picture of the eye drop vaccine. So for vaccination, I always suggest to use first vaccine as an eye drop vaccine. Nowadays in birds or the poultry farming, as the flocks are of 5,000, 10,000, nobody goes for eye drop vaccine. But I would always suggest that first vaccine should go as an eye drop vaccine. An integrated approach of the vaccine should be there. See, vaccination strategy for IB, if there is infectious bronchitis, we have to design the vaccination strategy. Always match the serotype. The serotype which is prevalent in our farm or our area, nearby farms, that vaccine should be used for that serotype. If possible, genotype, but all the time genotype vaccines will not be available. So but at least serotype vaccines should be used. So integrated approach of the vaccination is very, very important. Use live vaccine for good immune response. Bird should receive at least one live vaccine, and so that the target organ by that virus can be protected with the live vaccine. And then if you want to maintain the immunity for a longer time, then you can use the killed or inactivated vaccine. This is usually we do for the VVND. When there is outbreak, we vaccinate the birds with the inactivated vaccine because there is no live vaccine available. Inactivated vaccine, so that till 42 days, the antibody titer is maintained and we can protect the birds. Also, it is very important to vaccinate only healthy chicks. The chicks which are having some or other disease problem, don't vaccinate. Wait for 2-3 days and then you can vaccinate. So vaccination is really very, very important for preventing, and one must go for it. Then coming to next is include immunostimulant in the feed. The days have gone that you can take a risk of not adding this. You see, 20 years before, the bird used to grow 30 times in 42 days. Now it is growing 60 times in 42 days. So it is necessary. Shall I stop?
No, sir, you can continue.
No, sir, carry on, sir, please, carry on.
Okay. So it is necessary to add immunostimulants in the feed. There are lot many immunostimulants present in a market. They are available, and it is mandatory nowadays to, if you want the optimum output from the bird, you have to add these immunostimulants. Give toxin-free feed. I already mentioned in the therapeutic that as soon as disease is there, first thing you have to do is to check the toxin in the feed. If it is negative, then only you continue feeding. Otherwise, whatever the costly medicines you are feeding to the bird, it is going in the feces. It is going in the feces. So as a prevention also, you always try that toxin-free diet should be given. There is one reference from Gomati. This is a research work conducted by Kemin Industries in India, and they have given the tolerable limits. But to me, if you ask, there is no tolerable limit. It should be zero tolerance. Aflatoxin 20 ppb, ochratoxin 40. I did my PhD on ochratoxin. Even 40 ppb is not tolerable by the birds. What we have today, we should have European policy, zero mycotoxin. That is the best. And these standards are of 10 years before, and now in 10 years, the industry has improved a lot. Genetic of the bird has improved a lot. So we have to rethink about this. What is a tolerable limit for the mycotoxins? Then all in all out policy is the best for broilers. The days has gone that there used to be some difficulty of selling of the birds. If 10,000 birds are there, earlier it used to take 7 days, 9 days to liquidate the flock. But now 25,000 birds can be sold in 2 days because of the improved transport. So all in all out should be the best policy if you want to control the disease. So in prevention, this strategy should be taken. It helps in the even vaccination and break the infection cycle. You can disinfect. Like this thing you can do and you can break the infection cycle. If on the farm 2-3 flocks are available, one shed is vacant, you disinfect that shed, but the neighboring shed has birds. So there is no sense. All viruses from that shed are going to come to this clean, disinfected shed. So it has no value. So all in all out policy for the farms should be used. Strict biosecurity, you can use the sanitation. There are good sanitizers or disinfectants available nowadays. Wide range is there. You can use any of them. Very good. If you use the triple salt, particularly in therapeutic, I forgot to tell you, if you use the triple salt, you can even feed to the bird or you can ask the bird to drink that water. And it helps a lot. So in therapeutic, sorry, I forgot. You can use the triple salt, feed to the bird. Other disinfectant you cannot feed to the bird, but triple salt you can, and then get the treatment for the viruses. Then if there is some outbreak, then in such cases, some bold statements I am making it here. After outbreak, the premises should be disinfected with the powerful disinfectant and pressure. With the pressure, you have to disinfect the shed. You can fumigate the shed. This is very, very important. And don't do the husbandry for 1 month. Close down the farm for at least 1 month when there is a disease. It helps in the passing of the viruses from one batch to other batch. I am not doubting the disinfectant methods or the cleaning procedures. Everybody is doing very perfect. Doing very perfect. But if by chance some virus particles remain live on the shed, and if they get the new host, they will be very happy to jump on the host and cause the disease. So if you want to prevent it, in a phase of outbreak, after an outbreak, you can advise the farmer to stop the husbandry for at least 1 month so that the cycle is broken and the next batch can be protected. Then about disposal of the litter, dead birds, gunny bags, you can use the burying method. Burning is nobody does it, or composting. This is the best way. Composting is the best way. When there is one article, very good article published, spreading of the Newcastle disease from one farm to other farm by the dogs. In some presentation, I have one picture of the dog eating the dead birds. So like in human respiratory tract, this virus remains live. It remains live in the dog also. It remains live in the dog intestine for 10 days. And whatever the defecation of that dog is doing in those 10 days will have the live virus. And from one farm to other farm, these dogs are going to move and they will take this virus along with it. So the best is either you bury it or make a compost. This compost manure is good, and this manure you can sell. It is very rich in phosphorus. And if you ask any agriculturist, if you want to buy the phosphorus manure, it is very expensive. So composting is the best way that you can do or suggest. And to tell you very frank, this composting can destroy even influenza virus, coronavirus, Newcastle disease virus, any damn virus, it can destroy. So I'm coming at the end. So if you take care of the birds, birds will take care of you. This is slogan for farmers, but I think it is for vets also. And learning is a never-ending process, and the sources of knowledge are countless. You can take knowledge from anything, anywhere, any place. So by saying this, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much for your patience listening. Thanks a lot. If there are any questions and if I can answer, I will be happy to answer them.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. First of all, I would like to congratulate you that more than 215 participants, they are live on this Cisco WebEx, and more than 15 participants, they are attending this webinar on our Facebook, ISBM Facebook page, sir, live.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Again, as far as our ISBM is concerned, sir, senior life member of the ISBM, Dr. Umesh Dhimri, sir, Dr. VM Doot, sir, and ISBM members like Dr. Gautam Bhojne sir, Dr. Chetak Panchebhai sir, Dr. Pankaj Kumar, Dr. Ajay Katoj, and n number of students, sir, they have participated in your wonderful webinar and they are communicating their message, some message they are highlighting on my chat box. It is super presentation. Thank you very much for informative speech. It is really helpful and excellent presentation and all, sir. So I would like to again congratulate to you and I'm thankful to you for accepting our invitation and delivering a webinar on our ISBM portal, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, there are
Thank
some
you very much
questions
for
I will
your words, good words, and the all participants that they listen to me. This poultry diseases is a very big topic, but I just control myself to talk only on this as that 1 hour talk was there. If they have any questions, I will be very happy. And
Yes, sir.
thank the ISBM for giving me a chance to interact with all your society members and colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Chaudhary, he is really very, it means, excellent listener. He has raised 3 to 4 questions. I would like to thank
Fine.
Dr. Chaudhary also, sir. Sir, he has asked 3 to 4 questions. I have collected among 2 to 3 from his admin chat box. Is there any use of antihistaminics in poultry? Antihistaminics.
Not really, because the antihistaminics they damage the renal function, and the more fluids are passed out from the kidney, and the litter gets wet. And when litter gets wet, it again complicates the condition. So there are certain bronchodilators are there. They are of some use. They are being used, but antihistaminics are very rarely used. They are used for other causes, like when there is ascites or some other symptoms are there where there is accumulation of the fluid in the body. There you can use some antihistaminics or sorry, what is the term? I'm not a man of medicine, but kidney flushers, and the more fluid is drained out of from the body, those things that you can use, like Lasix or something.
Sir, there is a question for Dr. Pankaj. Nowadays, zero budget poultry is being popularized. Okay, so explain
Yes.
its feasibility by use of compost and vermi for backyard poultry, sir. Just throw your light on this aspect, sir.
Yes, it's a concept of our Honorable Minister of Animal Husbandry, Union Minister of Animal Husbandry, and they are promoting it zero budget poultry with low input and means whatever the output you are getting from the vermicompost or some maggots or something like that. I would say still it is in infancy. We do not have very concrete output or the work done on that, and we can tell 100% that this will work and it will be profitable. Because if we are not giving the bird which has been developed over the period by the geneticist, it is such a miraculously developed that layer bird, particularly this zero budget, is for the layer, because broilers cannot survive on that thing. So if it is for layer, one layer bird gives 310, minimum 310 to 320 eggs in a 365 days. So you know the potential of this bird. Almost every 25 hours or 26 hours is giving one egg. So he needs a nutrition for that, and that cannot be cope up with this kind of rearing. Okay, if you are targeting only 150 eggs from that bird in a year, that is fine. That is fine. You can do with that kind of husbandry. But if you want 310 eggs, you have to give the good nutrition to the bird. So it depends on your aim. If you want 150 eggs, 120 eggs, fine. You can do with that kind of husbandry, but not with this bird. You have to use the local bird for that.
Okay. I'm taking next question. It is from Dr. Siddharth. He is asking preferred sample for antemortem diagnosis of influenza, IB, RD, and IBD using molecular diagnosis. He want to do the molecular diagnosis. He is asking what are the preferred sample for antemortem diagnosis of the viral diseases like IB, RD, and IBD, sir.
It's a very good question asked. You can take, these all viruses, they multiply in the spleen, also in the respiratory tract. IB, RD, and influenza, LPI. So you can have the sampling from the trachea, bronchi, or lung, and on the spleen, and nowadays it is a very, very wonderful FTA cards are available. The days has gone that you have to collect the sample in a virus transport medium, ship it on the ice or something like that. Just take the impression smear on FTA card, put it in an envelope, wrap it and put it in an envelope and post it, speed post it. To tell you very frank, we receive samples by this way from all corners of India for molecular diagnosis. This is the beauty of the research and development, that you can ship your samples from anywhere to any part of the globe.
Thank you, sir. Yes, there is one question, sir. Which strain of breed of chicken are more susceptible to these diseases? Is indigenous breeds are less susceptible as compared to others?
The diseases which I have taught you, also not taught, I've just shared with you. Sorry, I'm a professor, so it comes to my mouth very frequently. I just discussed with you. So those are diseases, they doesn't differentiate which bird it is, which species it is, which kind of bird. It affects equally to the pigeon, equally to the bird. Avian influenza suffers, can infect desi as well as the leghorn or broiler equally. Infectious bronchitis, Ranicate disease equally. Only thing is that if you see the desi bird and their husbandry practices, in a 1 square kilometer area, there are only 500 to 600 birds. But in a intensive farming, in a 1 square kilometer area, there are 30,000 birds. So the transmission is fast. Viral passaging is fast. That's why you see the mortality fast. In the desi kind of rearing, if the intensification is same, you will find the same lesions, everything same. So these viral diseases, they don't differentiate which kind of bird it is, which kind of species it is. Pathology is same.
Thank you, sir. Again, one interesting question. How to destroy influenza virus? Some want to, it means destroy completely the influenza virus, sir. Your opinion on this?
Very interesting and very, very important question. Very, very important question, that how to destroy influenza virus. There are some certain disinfectants, like it was a society seminar, so I didn't put the name or something, but triple salt, they work very, very nicely on the low pathogenic avian influenza, and they have a capability of inactivating the virus very nicely. Secondly, quaternary ammonium compounds. Whatever the recommended concentration is there, if you use it and for that time, it can destroy. But see what happens in the field, their recommended dose is 5 ml to 10 ml per liter of water. And my experience, I'm working in this field since 91. The concentration added by the farmers is less. Or on other hand, he will add double or triple. So the disinfectants which are used, they are equally toxic to the bird also, except triple salt. So such things should not happen. If they are used at the right concentration and with the right frequency, quaternary ammonium compounds, triple salts, can kill influenza virus.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, there is a question from bacteriology. Sir, please brief about important bacterial diseases like Colobacillosis and Salmonellosis and how to do differential diagnosis between these two. In nutshell, uh, 3 to 4 points will you highlight on differentiation, sir?
Yes, very well we can differentiate. Actually, I was limiting here myself for the viral diseases because it took 1 hour. If I took bacterial, it might take another some time. Sorry for that. So, Escherichia coli in broilers and Salmonellosis in broilers can be very well differentiated. Avian pathogenic Escherichia coli or the pathogenic in the broilers will produce perihepatitis, pericarditis, and few of the Escherichia coli they can cause enteritis. And when there is a subline cause of the infectious bronchitis or mycoplasma, it can cause the tracheal plugs or the bronchial plugs. This is a Escherichia coli. And if there is a salmonellosis, salmonellosis can cause a necrotic foci on the liver, necrotic foci on the spleen, and enteritis. So these are the three organs which are majoritarily hampered by the salmonellosis, and Escherichia coli will cause fibrinous pericarditis, fibrinous perihepatitis, tracheal plugs or bronchial plugs, and mild enteritis. So very well you can differentiate.
Okay, sir, again, there is a question from Dr. Hari Krishna. Sir, how do we need to advise deworming in commercial broilers?
I don't think you need to advise any deworming to the commercial broilers. Of course, in cockerels or layers you can, but if you see this 42 days cycle is there, and the husbandry practices we have nowadays, unless we use wet litter for 2-3 batches continuously, you are not going to get the worm load in the broilers. So if litter is changed for the every batch, be sure that you are not going to get the worm load in the broilers. If same litter is used for 2-3 batches, then you can have worms in the broilers. And if it is there, if it is there, I would advise only to go for a levamisole as a dewormer. Don't use piperazine and other dewormers because the broilers are already under stress, already they are immunocompromised, and if you use piperazine, the liver will be again on the burden, liver may damage, and bird may have the other complications. So use levamisole if at all you have seen any worms in the broilers.
Thank you, sir. Chaudhary, he has a really interesting question. Sir, without Shank hemorrhage sign, how I can or how someone can differentiate in between AI and ND?
Shank cyanosis is not that common in LPI. Actually, LPI you will find more the respiratory kind of lesions in the broilers. Respiratory lesions, and majority of the time it is complicated with Escherichia coli. Majority of the time it is complicated with Escherichia coli. So you will have to have the laboratory diagnosis for the low pathogenic avian influenza diagnosis. On gross observations, it is really very difficult if there are no Shank cyanosis. If you are very exceptionally lucky, you can have some Wattle cyanosis or comb cyanosis, but you see Wattle and combs are not that developed in the broilers. They are not developed. Body develops very fast, but comb and Wattle do not develop. So you may not get it. You will get the respiratory lesions, and few times you will see enteric lesions, but you have to have the PCR diagnosis for confirmation of low pathogenic avian influenza.
Sir, I'm taking one from Dr. Sri Lakshmi. For therapeutic vaccination of RD, which vaccine can be used? RDF, Lasota, or RDK?
Lasota.
Lasota. Okay.
Lasota. Lasota should be used.
Thank you,
But
sir.
I have few suggestions over here. That whenever there is a disease outbreak in of Newcastle disease, and usually it happens after 21 days or 30 days or something like that. So all the persons, they will do the drinking water vaccination for the birds. So in that case, you have to use 1.5 times vaccine. Like if flock is of 5,000, use 7,500 doses for the vaccination. And in vaccine, I have shown you some blue color solution is there for the vaccination. It is widely available nowadays. Use some color indicator so that the bird has picked up the vaccine. So you will be sure that all birds, they have picked up the vaccine because their beak will become colored. And the birds which are ailing, they may not drink the vaccine. So for those birds, at least for those birds, you have to vaccinate them intraocularly or internally. Intraocularly would be the best. Vaccinate them. So no bird should be missed. And then you can control the viruses. Actually, vaccination strategy itself is a 30-minute talk. How to vaccinate. Vaccination should be done in the cold condition, cold environment. Water should be also chilled. Vaccine should be consumed within 20 minutes, like that. So many things are there. One should take care.
Sir, one interesting question is flashed on my camera. Yes.
Please.
Any universal disinfectant can we use for prevention of diseases, sir? It's really very interesting, sir.
Yeah, you have to use disinfectant for prevention of the viral diseases. You have to use disinfectant. See, in a husbandry practices, poultry husbandry practices, it is always recommended that whosoever is coming on the farm, you should disinfect him. Disinfect him means his foot and hands should be disinfected. And there should be some disinfectant foot baths before entering into the farms. You have to use it. Then weekly inside the shed and 3 feet outside the shed. Weekly disinfectant spray should be done. And I have already told you that quaternary ammonium compound, triple salts, they work very well. They are universal. They work really very well. If they are used in a right proportion, right concentration, they are very effective. So weekly spraying of disinfectant in the shed and outside the shed, 3 feet outside the shed, at the entry point of the farm and shed is necessary.
Sir, I'm taking last question. It is also from Dr. Chaudhary. He is related with virology, sir.
Yeah.
Case of ND challenge vaccination is done with ND vaccine. Is it good? Yeah, just make the question, sir.
Yeah, please repeat.
In case of ND challenge vaccination is done with ND vaccine alone, is it good, or it means he want seek your opinion, sir?
That's what I didn't understood. ND challenge vaccination and ND vaccine means something is I'm not able to get.
Okay, sir. We'll contact with him and collect his question. Again, sir,
Yeah, please. You can mail me.
Yeah,
you can mail me. I will reply to him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Almost, sir, more than 10 to 12 questions they are available with me right now at my chat box. But
Yeah,
as
you
for
can.
the time,
You
I am
can.
collecting it and send it to you, sir.
You can send me mail along with their email address if you have, so that I can reply with them in the same email instead
Okay.
of replying you and you reply to them. And I will also have their contacts. So in
Okay, sir.
future, if they have some queries, they can contact me.
Again, sir's contact number and detail is available during this presentation on first slide only. You can directly interact with sir also. I again request all the participants that directly they can interact with the sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank you.
accepting our invitation and this delivering webinar or ISBM forum, sir. Sir, I would like to request Dr. Doot, sir, to propose vote of thanks for today's webinar. Doot, sir, please.
Before that, I would like to thank the participants for a nice questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
So questions are very good. That indicates that this talk is of little bit help to them.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I would
Thank you.
request Doot, sir, to propose the vote of thanks. Doot, sir, please. Doot, sir, is there? Doot, sir, please.
To propose the vote in May.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible now, sir. You are audible now, sir.
Yeah, am I audible? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible now, sir. Please. Yes, sir, you are audible now, please. Sir, you are audible.
The phenomenon, Dr. Nitinji Kurkure, research of the organizer under the
Hello, sir. I think there is some network error. So I am taking responsibility to offer a vote of thanks. I am thankful to Kurkure sir for giving his time and delivering the webinar on our ISBM forum. I am thankful to the Executive Committee of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, President of ISBM, General Secretary of ISBM, Regional Secretaries of ISBM for permitting us to hold this webinar. I am also thankful to Dr. Nilesh Sindhu and his team be with us to do all the technical expertise, to use all the technical expertise to undertake this webinar in proper way. With this, thank you very much for all for supporting our webinar. I am also thankful to all participants who have participated and make this
Looking
webinar
forward
as a
more.
grand success. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.